Quest number 85, Forgettable Tale of a Drunken Dwarf. We return to Commander Veldeman, and he tells us that something is happening with the Red Axe. They have all completely left the city, and the rest of the Consultorium is in turmoil. He asks us to try to find out where they went. Unfortunately, his only lead is a drunken dwarf in the east of the city. For those who don't know, this is an NPC that doesn't exist in the same form from back in 2005. There used to be a random event called the Drunken Dwarf that teleported to players and gave kebabs and beer to them. We speak to the Drunken Dwarf, and he says he'll only tell us about the Red Axe if we get him some of the good stuff. We go to a bar nearby and buy a beer and give it to him. He says it's no good, and he wants the really good stuff. Something he calls the original Kelda Stout. He hands us a Kelda hop seed, but we still need 3 more to even plant them. He says his drinking buddies have some too. We find a ready drunk who will trade us a seed for an eye patch. We go to Varrock real quick and buy one. Before we go back to Keldagrim, we find Korvac underneath the White Wolf Mountain. He offers to let us borrow the seed, and we promise to give it back when we're done with it. Returning back to Keldagrim, we give the ready dwarf the patch, and he gives us the seed. Next, we speak with Goss at the bar on the west side. He says he'll give us a seed if we share a toast with him. We do, and he gives us the 4th seed. We take the seeds to the hops patch outside the Consultorium and speak with Ryan the gardener. He tells us Kelda hops only grow underground as sunlight is harmful to them, and he lets us use the patch. We plant them, and wait. Hey, they're done. We take the grown hops back to the bar in the east and go into the brewery. We fill the vat with water, and then add barley, then hops, and then buy some ale yeast from Blandivar, and sprinkle that in. Then we wait. Hey, it's done. We pour it in the glass and deliver it to the Drunken Dwarf. He drinks it and appears to sober up. He tells us the story on how he was a part of a small mining company and resigned to become an explorer. He explored a boarded up mine south of Keldagrim. He rambles on, and then the screen fades in and out until he's done. We talk to the cart conductor to the south and ask him about the boarded up tunnel. He says it's an old mine. We ask to go in. He says we need special permission from someone with more authority than him. We return to our boss, the Blue Opal Director. He says he'll have the boards removed forthwith. We return to the carts and ride into the tunnel. We find ourselves deep underground with a giant and elaborate mine track over an abyss. Nearby is a chest with some strange stones and a control panel. The control panel accepts the stones, and placing them in reroutes the cart track. We solve the puzzle by having the cart go to various other chests until we get enough control stones to make it to the exit. We crawl into the next area and find the Red Axe speaking with an ogre shaman. They're talking about killing us, but the director says we may still be useful to them. They're running some sort of experiments on slaves. They mention that they're responsible for bribing the boatman to crash into the statue. We sneak past them and arrive in another chasm. We solve this one's puzzle as well and find ourselves in a storage room with crates and bookcases. We search some of the crates. One of them has a letter that reads,
I am writing to advise you that our secret preparations to the statue have been completed. All you need to do now is hit it with your boat. Take some gullible human along when you do. The mines are crawling with them these days. The human will surely get the major blame. After this, the statue is going to be rebuilt in the image of our great director. You need not to concern yourself with the how and why, but rest assured, you'll be compensated greatly. Regards, Colonel Grimson of the Red Axe.
Another crate has another note that reads,
Report on intruder. We found a dwarf wandering in our mines. We weren't sure if he was a spy or simply an explorer, but we couldn't take any risks. We decided to send him back with his memory wiped. Rather than put him to use as one of our test subjects, we can't afford having to explain another mysterious disappearance at this point. Additionally, we added something to the spell that would make him hungry for kebabs and thirsty for beer, so that whatever he remembered will be dismissed as the ravings of a drunken fool. Grunch did a good job. He seems to be fitting in well. Nevertheless, the spell seems to have been a little bit too strong. The subject is unlikely to recover from his condition. His obsession with kebabs is a bit too extreme. We'll tell Grunch to adjust the spell next time.
Next, we find a book on the Red Axe employee records.
Readma, Director of the Red Axe, Employee Number 1. Information classified. Grimson, the Butcher of Barendir. Employee 4297. Grimson was once a soldier in the Dwarven army and quickly made his way up the ranks to colonel. He served the Black Guard at Ice Mountain and in Kandarin. He was present at the Battle of Barondir when he fought against an army of trolls. It was here that he got his nickname, the Butcher of Barondir, as he mercilessly killed trolls, even as they retreated in defeat. Here, also, he got his distinctive scar running across his forehead in a hand-to-hand battle with a particularly ferocious troll. After this battle, Grimson became more and more aggressive, even to his fellow dwarves. Following a particularly vicious attack on a comrade, he was dismissed from the Black Guard. Soon after, he was recruited by the Red Axe. Here, he's learned to control his rage and become even stronger. By now, he's become the right-hand dwarf of the Director. While he holds no official rank, he is often affectionately referred to as the Colonel. Grunch, Ogre Shaman, Employee 38262, found lost and near death in the ice-cold mountains above Keldagrim. Grunch was nearly mistaken for a troll at first. Taken in by the Red Axe and nursed back to health, it turned out that he was in fact a powerful Ogre Shaman. Intelligent by Ogre standards and steadfastly loyal to his rescuers, he has taken up a prominent position in the ranks of the Red Axe. This is primarily due to the fact that since dwarves cannot use magic, they must rely on other races as spellcasters. Grunch fits the bill perfectly.
After reading these 3 documents, we head deeper into the mines and find yet another chasm. We solve it once again and finally see what the Red Axe's experiments consist of. They're turning slaves into obedient, mindless chaos dwarves. Before we have a chance to leave, though, we're caught by Grunch. He casts something on us, and we pass out. We wake up at the minecart, but can't remember what we're supposed to tell Veldaban. We go to him anyway and tell him we need a beer and a kebab, just like the drunken dwarf. We buy a kebab from Shut the Kebab seller and head to the pub and enjoy our beer and kebab with the company of our drinking buddies. We share stories of kebabs we saw marching in line as a group. We pass out drunk, and Colonel Grimacin confirms the spell worked. Happy that nobody will believe us. Quest complete. The next mini-quest, The Curse of Zaros. If we go to Glariel's tomb while wearing the Ring of Visibility from the Desert Treasure quest, we can see a person in the shadows. We speak with him using our Ghost Speak amulet. We tell him we want to hear his story. He explains his name is Valdez. He was a servant of Saradomin as an explorer of this land when they were new to it. The day he was turned into this form, he had found a huge temple hidden underground. He found the Staff of Armadil in that temple. He chose to take it to Saradomin to increase his power and headed to Entrana. However, he never made it there. A thief named Renard attacked him and stole his staff. He asked us to find Renard and learned what happened after he stole it. He hands us a piece of rope as payment. We ask where Renard may be. He says that he joined a group of bandits northeast of here. We head into the wilderness and find Renard in the bandit camp. He's in the same state that Valdez is in. He tells us his story. He just happened to come across Valdez, who wasn't particularly inconspicuous with his wealth. He jumped him and stole his staff, thinking someone would pay a lot of money for it. He never even knew it was the Staff of Armadil. He says he did know it was a god weapon, though, and a powerful god in the northeast that took the Majorat away from under Ichlorand control would want it. He can't remember his name, though. Renard hired a messenger to go to this god and tell him he wanted to sell it. However, in the god's place, the god's general arrived instead. The general's name was Zamorak. He tells us the messenger would know more. His name is Karim. He gives me another piece of the robes. He says Karim is somewhere near Karolngar, which is the Graveyard of Shadows. We find him, and he tells us his story. He says that he was actually responsible for finding a buyer. Renard never told Karim that he had one in mind. Karim decided to have Zamorak be the buyer. He mentions that Zamorak was a mortal back in this time. He says that Zamorak purchased the staff fairly in the tavern that Karim met Renard. He says the event that followed is likely why they're cursed. He wasn't there, but something was done soon after that resulted in Zamorak's banishment and likely their curse. He says that Lucian was certain there was a spy for Saradomin named Lanessa. For those who don't remember, Lucian is the person that tried to get us to steal the Staff of Armadil a long time ago. He says we should find Lanessa to learn more. He pays us with another piece of the set and says she is likely somewhere near the coast. We find her at Port Sarim and ask for her story. She says that she indeed worked as a spy for Saradomin amongst the forces of the Empty Lord. She says she won't speak his true name. This god was stronger than all the others they knew of. She explains that there was dissent amongst the Empty Lord's forces. He allied himself with the dark creatures of this world. She goes on to say that even though he was stronger than all the other active gods, he couldn't make a move against them, for their combined retaliation would overpower him. The stalemate was brought to an end with the discovery of the Staff of Armadil. With it, the Empty Lord could destroy all of the other gods. Linessa says she went to her comrade Dalek, the mage, and let him know of the imminent sale of the weapon, hoping Saradomin would ally with Armadil to prevent the Empty Lord from acquiring the staff. However, she believes that Dalek failed and asks us to find out why. She pays us with another piece of the set and tells us that Dalek would likely be at an altar of Saradomin. He's in the Edgefield Monastery. We ask him what happened to the message he was supposed to deliver. He says that the forces of the Empty Lord were plotting to overthrow their master. He explains that some of the Majorat were not happy being controlled by Iclarin, liberated by the Empty Lord, and then controlled by him instead. Zamorak was leading the plot to overthrow him. Dalek says he chose not to tell Saradomin about the plot, as he thought the infighting would be more beneficial than trying to stop it. More so, he even assisted Zamorak by casting a spell to conceal the Staff of Armadil's presence, so the Empty Lord would not detect it. He regrets this action. He had no idea how much of a threat Zamorak would end up being. He says a man named Vigora would know the remainder of the story. Vigora was one of the few humans Zamorak allowed in his ranks. He asks us to go find him. He gives us another piece of the robe and tells us Vigora may be found in his castle. Vigora's castle is the present-day Slayer Tower. We find him near the Aberrant Spectres. He's the only one to realize that all 6 of them are cursed. He says he was there during the event that brought the curse upon all of them. It was the same day that Zamorak ascended to godhood. He says that Zamorak's honor guard consisted of dragon riders, Majorat, demons, and vampires. Vigora was the only human fierce enough in combat to be a part of it. He was a part of the group going to buy the staff from Renard. They all thought it was a trick by the Empty Lord and were surprised to learn that it was genuine. They realized they had to act quickly before the Empty Lord realized they had acquired it. He mentions that with them was Ozanandra, who was still loyal to the Empty Lord. Zamorak, Haziel, Draken, Thamaron, Zimmergul, and Vigora made the plan to overthrow the Empty Lord and all pledged allegiance to Zamorak. In return, they would all be given a large piece of land to lord over. They went to the castle where the Empty Lord lived under the pretense that they had war plans against Saradomin. A battle broke out between the forces of Zamorak and the Empty Lord's guards. Zamorak plunged the Staff of Armadil into the Empty Lord's back, but the battle continued with the staff sticking out of him. Even with this impairment, Zamorak was losing. The Empty Lord had his hands around Zamorak's neck. As he kicked and screamed, the Empty Lord seemed to trip or slip, something very uncharacteristic of someone so powerful. The staff went all the way through the Empty Lord and impaled Zamorak as well. Suddenly, a flash of bright light came from them both, and Zamorak stood victorious. With the final whispers of the Empty Lord, he cursed all those who had helped Zamorak on that day, which is why the 6 people are in this state. Afterwards, the other gods arrived and banished Zamorak from the world. Vigora guesses that the curse only worked on the humans that assisted, as the others are beings of magic, or it's because they live so much longer than humans that they'll eventually be cursed but not yet, or even maybe innocent bystanders could also be cursed, we just don't know it. He pays us with the final piece of the robe set. Mini quest complete. Finally, he tells us the name of the Empty Lord. Zaros. Quest number 86, Garden of Tranquility. A new NPC was just added to the game, the Queen of Mistalin, Ella Maria, Roald's wife. We talked to her in her unkempt garden. She says it was just installed and she's trying to make a beautiful garden to bring happiness to the king. She speaks down to us. We go to leave, but she tells us to wait. She asks if we know of anyone with farming experience. We tell her we're handy at farming, and she subsequently orders us to help her with her garden. We tell her to ask nicely, and she does. We accept, and she hands us a long list of exotic plants to grow, as well as decorations to place. She says in order to get them, we'll need to use the art of persuasion. She says we need to be taught by the wise old man in Draenor. We find him in his home across from the bank. He explains that Ella Maria was actually a commoner that got lucky with marrying into royalty. Moving on to the task, he asks if we've heard of the diplomat known as Karos. We tell him we were given his ring from Lord Rillagarth in Mauritania. He explains that Karos rose to power in Mauritania under Lord Draken, the ruler. Karos was Draken's only mortal servant, as his skills as a diplomat were so grand. He was a spy, an assassin, and a negotiator because he could convince anyone to do whatever he wanted, mostly because of the enhancements of the ring. However, the ring is useless in that regard when worn by someone without talents, as it enhances the wearer's innate abilities. We ask what happened to Karos and how Dr. Finkenstring got a hold of the ring. He explains that Rillagarth's castle was actually Karos's. Nobody knows what happened to him, but some guess that people turned on him because he was too confident in his abilities. We realize it's possible Karos is still alive and wants his ring back, but the wise old man thinks that's unlikely. Moving on, the wise old man says he can help us become persuasive enough to draw from the ring. We proceed and he asks us a series of questions. All of them are actually references from the game as it was in 2005, mostly about previous quest dialogue. The ring activates and we receive the Ring of Karos A. We put on the ring and look at the list. We start at the Falador farm nearby, we speak with the gardener, Elstan, and ask for some delphinium seeds. We put on a charm and compliment his knowledge. He ends up saying he'll give us some delphinium seeds, but we need to grow him some marigolds so he can give them to Lyra in Mauritania. We plant the seeds and go to the next location. We speak to Dantera at the Catherby farming patches and ask her how to grow a white tree. She explains that all the white trees in the world have been chopped down. We say there's something she isn't telling us. She says it's a closely guarded secret, but we charm it out of her. She says there's a single white tree remaining on the top of Ice Mountain. We deduce that we can cut a shoot from the tree and grow another one, but we have to do it right, as cutting the shoot will kill the tree. We climb Ice Mountain and find the tree, we cut the shoot and put it in a plant pot, then water it, and go to the next location. Nearby in the Edgeville Monastery, we speak with the gardener, Brother Althric. Wait, what? This is dialogue for a quest that isn't out yet. Okay, well, instead of talking to him, we try and just take the rose seeds, and he stops us. We charm him, and he feels the magics from the ring and calls it evil. He says we must throw whatever dark talisman we're holding down the nearby well. We do. We return to Althric, and he allows us to take all the seeds we need. We go back to the well and fish up the ring. We head to Mauritania and speak with Lyra. We ask her for orchid seeds. She says she has her own problems to worry about, and we offer to help. She says she tends to this allotment. Her mother runs the farming shop nearby. Unfortunately, nobody's passing through these lands to trade, so they live off of what she grows. She explains they avoid the blood ties to Draken, using the blood of others. She says she seduces farmers in the other lands and lures them here, and the Vyres take them away. Eventually, she becomes distraught and lets us have some orchid seeds, but first we must grow her some onions. 39 farming. While waiting for these to grow, we head to Ardorian and speak with Kragan. We ask him for snowdrop seeds. He says he doesn't have any, and we notice that he's irritable and offer to help with whatever's wrong. He says nobody ever asked him how he's doing, just to watch their crops. He says for once he wants someone to grow something for him. Cabbages. We plant the cabbages. Next, we find Bernard in Taverley. He asks if we know anything about grapevine diseases. He says he's tried everything to cure these, but nothing seems to work. He agrees to give us seeds if we cure the vines. We try plant cure, but it doesn't work. He recommends we speak with a druid gardener named Elaine. We find him nearby, and he explains he's researched exotic plant diseases. He says we can make a potent plant cure by adding some crushed rune essence to a regular plant cure. We smash a rune essence on an anvil and crush it to dust and add it to the plant cure. We return to Bernard and use it. It works, and he gives us the seeds. We return to Elstan, and the marigolds have grown. We give them to him, and he gives us the seeds. Lyra's onions have grown as well. She gives us the orchid seeds. Kragan's cabbages are grown, and he gives us the snowdrop seeds. We return to Ellen Maria's garden and rank and plant everything. We ask her how we're supposed to move a statue all the way here. She gives us a trolley. We head to Falador and literally just steal the statue of Sarah Dolman, while the nearby guards are distracted by PK Master 0036, who kills them both. We push the statue all the way back to the garden and place it on the plinth. Next, we do the same thing with a statue of a king from Lumbridge. Once we have everything planted and in place, we wait. Once it's all done growing, she asks us to go get the king. We do, and he complains about every part of the garden. She punches him in the face and demands gratitude. Jeez, I do not like these people. Quest complete. Level 40 farming, and she gives us 4 doses of a compost potion. Each dose turns 15 regular compost into super compost. This is the only vial of it we can get until 2008. Quest number 87, A Tale of Two Cats. Me and Leia find Unferth in his house in Berthorpe. He notices Leia and says he has a cat of his own named Bob, but he can't find him. He's been missing for a week. Leia knows Bob and says he can look after himself. We tell Unferth we'll help him. He says his friend Hild can help us locate Bob. We find her home nearby and tell her the situation. She can understand Leia as well. She tells us that our amulet of cat speak has a mechanism inside that can be enchanted to locate Bob. We give her 5 death runes and she enchants it. We use it and find Bob in the rune shop nearby. Bob and Leia have a conversation. Bob says he's fallen for someone named Niet, and while he's smitten, she told him that she would never be involved with someone without a family or status. He doesn't know his parents because Gertrude took him in as a kitten. We ask Gertrude about Bob's parents. She says she doesn't know. He was left on her doorstep in a basket as a kitten. Leia mentions a legend about Robert the Strong and tells us to ask Gertrude about it. We do, and she tells us to ask Reldo about it. We do, and he tells us Robert the Strong was a legendary hero, taller than the tallest man, and stronger than the strongest man. He had a faithful panther that battled alongside him named Odysseus. He wielded a 6-foot-tall longbow and fought against Dragonkin. The Dragonkin are an intelligent race of bird-like creatures that walked like men and were immortal, but couldn't reproduce. In a vain attempt to live on, they created corrupted versions of themselves, which we know as dragons today. For some reason, Leia thinks that Bob is actually Robert the Strong. We return to Bob and Leia tells him. He has no idea what she's talking about. She mentions how the Sphinx in Sophonim was able to understand how memories are affected when we were hypnotized and says we should talk to her. We ride down to Sophonim and talk to the Sphinx. She said there's a mark of power on Bob. She brings us to the desert and summons him. She hypnotizes Bob and he remembers that he is indeed Robert the Strong. Leia's skills of inferring are legendary. We see Bob's memories of Robert the Strong assaulting a castle and finding a dragonkin with Odysseus. Odysseus assaults the dragonkin and Robert assists from a range. Odysseus is slain and the dragonkin throws fireball after fireball into Robert. He falls to the ground, only to get up and deliver the killing blow. Leia has the Sphinx summon Niet now, and the Sphinx tells Niet that Bob was Robert the Strong. She falls for him and they immediately plan on eloping together. Bob asks us to look after Unferth. He gives us a list of chores to take care of. We shave him bald with a pair of shears, put a cake and milk on the table, make his bed, and plant potatoes in the garden. And wait. After that's done, we talk to Unferth, and he appears to be sick. He asks us to find a doctor. We go to the apothecary in Varrock, and he tells us that Unferth is a hypochondriac. He tells us all we need to do is dress like a doctor and give him a potion. The potion is just a vial of water. He gives us a reflective headband to be more convincing. We dress up and give him the potion. He feels much better. Bob and Niet have returned from eloping, and we see everywhere they went. This also shows that Bob is friends with the King Black Dragon. Ranger Noob forgets his anti-dragon shield and gets roasted. Also, Titanic reference. We go back to Unferth, and he says Bob's come home. He also found a package addressed to us. Quest complete. Inside the package are 2 lamps and a cat toy. We spend the lamps on 5,000 Herblore XP. Quest number 88, Wanted. We speak to Sir Tiffy in Falador Park and ask if he has any jobs for us yet. He says there's a problem with the dossier they have on us. It appears they made a mistake in our admission into the Temple Knights. Only white knights may join the Temple Knights, and we're definitely not that. He says they still want to keep us, but we need to become a white knight first. Currently, to become a white knight, you have to squire to a white knight for 5 years at a minimum. He spoke with Survey, and they've come up with a solution. There's a loophole that they plan to take advantage of. He tells us to speak with Ceramic and tell him we don't want to be a Temple Knight and instead want to be a white knight. We are to decline his offer to become a squire and ask to be deputized instead. We find Ceramic in the castle and tell him we quit the Temple Knights and want to be a white knight. He says we must squire under him for 5 years. We decline and ask if we can be deputized instead. He says this can only be done in a time of crisis. We return to Sir Tiffy and tell him what Ceramic said. He says as luck would have it, there's a very dangerous criminal on the loose, and he has told Ceramic to take care of it instead of having the Temple Knights do it. We go back to Ceramic, and he seems to be in a much different mood now. He says the evil soulless Dalagar has returned to Asgarnia, who uses dangerous new magics that they're powerless against. He begs for our help and agrees to deputize us as a white knight. We tell him we'll take care of it, and we return to Sir Tiffy. He tells us Soulless Delagar is one of the most dangerous men on the planet. He says under no circumstances do we engage directly with him in combat. Our job is to track him down, and then they'll send a team of knights to take him in. He makes a communications orb for us and tells us to use it to speak with our information operative named Savant. We speak into the orb, and Savant talks back through it. We ask her what our current assignment is. She says we need to scan with the comm orb to find Solus. She calibrated it to him and says that they have spy orbs placed near Lord Aquarius of the Black Knights in the Taverley Dungeon. Solus apparently paid him a visit recently. Another spy orb is located with a Zamorakian wizard they believe to be responsible for destroying the previous wizard's tower. Specifically, the Zamorakian wizard we're acquainted with in Varrock. He also was visited by Solus recently. We start in the Taverley Dungeon and speak with Lord Aquarius. We tell him we're here on behalf of the White Knights for a friend of his. He realizes we must mean Solus. He clarifies he's no friend. He will not help us, though, as he hates the White Knights. We threaten him. Savant says we shouldn't start a fight with him, as that won't help. Instead, try attacking his men. We kill one in front of him, and He says he'll help us if we stop. He says that all he knows is that Solus left behind fur. We leave and talk with the mages of Zamorak and Varrock. He says he'll help us in exchange for our Karm Orb. Savant says that the orb would self-destruct if we try to give it away. We ask if we could help any other way. He says Solus robbed him and stole his research. If we give him 20 rune essence, he'll give us his information. We give him the essence and he tells us that Solus went somewhere to the east after he left. We deduce he's in Canifis. We arrive in Canifis and Savant starts to scan for him. She says she's detecting traces of magic relating to a dimension that could be used as a scrying glass. And you can teleport between the two dimensions very slowly, effectively making you invisible. From your perspective, you can see 3 places simultaneously and move between all 3 of them freely. She says, however, one of the 3 has to be a dimension of horrors that causes terrible psychological side effects for the user. She goes on in more detail and believes that this is what Solus is doing. She's going to try and create a way to block his teleports. If we use the Comm Orb and scan nearby where one of his teleport points is, it should pull him out of it. We do it, and it works. But he immediately uses a regular teleport and gets away. He left behind an unholy symbol of Zamorak. We go to the ZMI altar south of Ardoyan and find him again. He teleports us to Camelot. Savant apologizes for not stopping him, but she's locked onto him again and finds a Cape of Champions. We go to the Champions Guild. This quest has broken the entire game. We scan him again, and he gets away in a smokescreen. Savant is still tracking him. This time she gets an eye patch. We track him down to the Brimhaven pub, and he casts some sort of spell on us that would have incinerated us if Savant didn't save us by shielding and teleporting us away. Still, it brought us within an inch of death. This time, her scan results in a Dorgishan weapon. We go to the Cave Goblin mine and scan again. A woman appears instead of Solus, and says we saved her. It turns out to be Solus in disguise, and he sucker punches us before moonwalking away. Savant says we're closing in on him. Every time he gets away, that's one more spot she's blocked him from accessing. This time, her scan reveals a beer. We find Solus once again in the Anil pub. He summons a Black Knight and we kill him. Her scan has 20 rune essence. We go to the Wizard's Guild and teleport into the Essence Mine, where Solus is waiting for us. The Temple Knights appear all around him. He kills them all in a single spell. However, he is visibly weakened by this. We finish the job and take his hat as a trophy. We give it to Ceramic in Falador Castle. Quest complete. Ceramic tells us that the ranking system works by killing Black Knights. The more we kill, the more armor and weapons we can purchase from them. Quest number 89. Mourning's in Part 2. We return to Arianwin and report on our findings from the previous part, telling him the Death Guard have found some sort of temple beneath Ardoyan.
Dear Saren, no. They rediscovered the Temple of Light?
I don't think they found the temple yet, but they know it's down there.
You must stop them at all costs. If they harness the power secured in that temple, they will be able to start the endgame before we can be ready.
What do you expect me to do about it?
Whatever you can. We cannot allow that power to fall into their hands.
Right then, I'm on it. As soon as I can get a key to the excavation site. The head mourner has finally received the spare key. Our job is to find out what happened to one of the dig teams that went missing. We take the key and run through the caves past the dark beasts. Near the end, we clearly see the Temple of Light was uncovered. And there's a group of dead slaves and 2 dead mourners. We're attacked by some sort of shadow, which must be what killed the dig team. On one of the mourners, we find a color wheel and a journal. The journal talks about this elf leaving his homeland. He believes he's doing what is right for his people. He joined the Death Guard and will be leaving the city in 1 more day. He writes that his brother says that he may have found something called the Grand Library. However, he goes on to write that Saren, the god of the elves, sealed the doors 2,000 years ago. The next day, he left. 2 years passed before the next entry. He completed his training and is getting his first assignment on the Death Guard. He was one of the mourners who passed through Arandar. His first job was the guard tower. 3 days later, he writes that he's been on guard duty and he feels bad for the way he has to treat the humans, but it's for the greater good. The next day, he's responsible for breaking the gnomish device used for dyeing sheep and destroying all the dye packs. He was forced to go to desk duty, but later found some important information. Saren's light will open the doors. Her crystal is but a filter. 2 days later, he writes that he's heard about a reclamation of the Well of Voyage. The last entry is 1 week later. He was ordered to investigate the rantings of a slave screaming about shadows. We know what happened next. We go to Arianwin and let him know what we found.
So they are 1 step from finding it. I was hoping I would not need to ask you this, but I need your help again. We need to restore the safeguards on the Temple of Light.
Tell me about this temple.
The temple was created thousands of years ago to protect an altar that dates back to a time before we walked this land. This altar has certain powers over life.
And you need me to fix it?
You really can be quite perceptive at times. Normally, it would not matter. But if the shadows are free to roam outside of the temple, then the safeguards must have failed.
Okay, I don't know about you, but I have no idea how to fix ancient elven technology.
Luckily, our ways have stayed very much the same. Somewhere in the temple, you will find a huge crystal set in the ground. If I'm right, this crystal will be darkened somewhat. I need you to bring back a sample of that crystal.
Alright then, I'll see what I can do. We return back to the Temple of Light and chisel off a chunk of the darkened crystal, then return to Arianwen. He summons Eluned and has her create a replacement crystal. Arianwen says we have to access the altar at the end of the temple to charge it, and then replace it where we found it. This will restore the safeguards. And here starts one of the most infamous quests in RuneScape history. The majority of the remainder of the quest is one giant progressive puzzle. There's a single beam of light that can be rerouted and recolored to open various barriers. The barriers are all different colors. In order to open them, the opposite light has to be shined into them. The opposite light can be found by looking at this color wheel we found in the Dead Mortar. The goal is to unlock the central barrier which leads into the Death Altar. The progression part is you don't initially have all the tools you need to make it to the end. You have to first open every chest in the temple to find all the mirrors and crystals, all while being constantly attacked by shadows and having to overcome agility obstacles, and oh boy, the agility obstacles. Place the mirrors throughout the light like so, and recolor it to yellow. Now we need to go through the obstacle. I'm gonna be here all day. What? That was the third try. What? Well, puzzle 1 completed. 2 mirrors and a blue crystal added to our collection. Next, we reset everything back. Point the light this way, turn it yellow, and point it to the pink door. Add cyan to make it green. Two more mirrors. Reset again, this time we're going down to the bottom floor, adding another layer of complexity. We point the light into this pinhole going through the wall. Fumble with the shadows for a minute, then point the light back up. Change it to yellow, then point it down this way. This room that we can't access has a crystal in it that changes the color to red. To get to where it's shining, now we have to go all the way around. Point the light this way, follow it to the end, and then point it down. Now we go down to the bottom floor where it's pointing. And I realize that I forgot to bring a rope. Got the rope. The red light opened the cyan door. Blue crystal acquired. For the first time, we're not resetting the puzzle. Instead, we're changing this from yellow to blue and pointing this one down. Opening the yellow door. Rotate once to find 2 more mirrors and a fractured crystal. This crystal is special, I'll show you in a minute. Reset the puzzle, now we need to go back into the blue door for the last time. What is our luck, dude? We place the blue crystal here, and then go back and take our yellow crystal and mirror back. Point this one up. Rotate it this way, then use our fractured crystal to split the light in all directions. This beam we point down. This other one we point to the corner where the blue room is and point it down as well. We point this green light to the pink door and enter, where the blue light is now shining, point it to the yellow door, and go through, getting 3 mirrors and 1 more fractured crystal. Now we have everything we need to get to the Death Altar. Last reset. This one's kind of complex to narrate, so instead, I'm just going to point out the goal. In the final room, there's a special pillar we need to shine blue and green light into on different sides, while also shining a red light down the middle of the 3rd floor. And we do just that. We go into this barrier, rotate the light that unlocked it to shine the final light into the special pillar, opening the barrier to the Death Altar. We make it through and find the Death Altar. Through some sort of divine comedy, Thorgal the dwarf meets us in there. We ask him how he got here. He says, through a hole in the back. Access through the underground pass. Now, just like all other altars, we need a talisman to access it. It just so happens Thorgal here has a death talisman. He'll trade it if we replenish his supplies for him. He hands us a list of 50 items. There's exactly 2 ways to get a death talisman right now. Complete this list, or get 90 Slayer. Guess which one we're doing. Before we leave, we have to make sure to turn this mirror back to the barrier, or else we have to reset the puzzle or go through the underground pass to get back to the altar. The list contains 50 items. I'm gonna need some help getting them all.
House key.
/book.
Archery ticket.
Leather boots and gloves.
Tinderbox.
Hammer. Cake tin.
Chisel.
Lobster pop.
Lockpick. Needle.
Thread.
Necklace mold. Kebab.
Gold ring.
Knife.
Flour.
Milk.
Egg.
Iron hatchet.
Ball of wool. Jug of wine. Fishing rod.
Oak log.
Plank.
Rope.
First 26 items delivered, 24 to go.
Flats. Rune essence.
Potato cactus.
Bronze bar.
Bronze med helm.
Iron nail.
Iron pickaxe.
Spade.
Rotten tomato.
Red berries.
Skull.
Shears.
Python.
Unicorn horn dust.
Cheese.
Sack of potatoes.
Baby dragon bones.
Also, there's a swamp tower right there.
Face mask.
Cooked meat.
White berries.
White apron.
Finally got all the items to Thorgal. He gives us the death talisman as promised. We go in, charge the crystal on the altar, and place it back where we found the original crystal. Then return to Arianwen. I have at last repaired the safeguards of the temple.
This is good news indeed, RS3 Released. That should stop anyone from using the altar for another 1,000 years.
Not quite. It seems some dwarves have broken in through the back of the temple.
Some dwarves?
That's what I found when I entered the altar room. It seems that a group of dwarves have set up an outpost in the underground pass and tunneled through to the back of the Temple of Light.
This is interesting news. We are still safe for the time being. I doubt very much if any of the Death God would ever venture into the underground pass.
Why is that?
A great many of them died down there at one time, in a huge battle. Now they fear to enter. I will send an envoy down to speak with them, and make sure the temple is secure. Well done, RS3 Released. You've done well. All I can offer is this trinket. It should allow the bearer to pass through the temple's front door.
Quest complete. Quest number 90, Rum Deal. On the northeastern tip of Mauritania is a dock with a man named Pirate Pete. He says he has a quest for us. He starts talking nonsense about him being a noble who had his estate seized and asked for help to find his family's sword so he could save living farmers from tyranny. We agree, as his uncorroborated sob story has touched our heart. He tells us to pick up our diversion before we leave. We turn around and say, "What diversion?" and get a headache. We see a cutscene of Pirate Pete talking with Captain Braindeath about us. We wake up and Captain Braindeath talks with us. He says that we already agreed to help him out, we just don't remember because of the concussion. We're on Braindeath Island and we're in the brewery of Captain Braindeath, the purveyor of the most vitriolic alcoholic beverages in the world. He says a week ago they became besieged by these guys. They're zombie protesters. Captain Braindeath thinks they could stop the protests if they get the protesters' captain drunk enough. First, they need to have someone grow blindweed out front. We head out and plant some blindweed. And wait. Are you starting to see a trend yet? We pick the blindweed and give it to the captain. He tells us to shove it into the hopper. The next ingredient is a bucket of stagnant water from the mountain nearby. The entrance to that area is guarded by 50% Luke, however, so we have to get past him first. It wasn't hard. We fill the bucket and return to the captain. He tells us to dump this into the hopper as well. Captain needs us to catch 5 loads of sluglings. We have to be careful because they're known for mind control. We have to shove them into the pressure barrel and then pressurize them. We catch 5 sluglings and a carom thulu. We shove them into the pressure chamber, then pressurize them. Then this starts happening. This is a marvel in modern animation. The rum only needs 1 more ingredient, but before we can do that, we have to exercise the possessed equipment. He gives us a wrench, and Davy, who used to be a priest, blesses it for us. He says something in Latin that I'm sure is nonsense, and the wrench is blessed. Groovy. We whack the machine and bonk the spirit. The final ingredient is the body of a diseased fever spider. We kill one and shove its corpse into the hopper. We take the rum and give it to Captain Donnie. He tells us that someone named Rabid Jack sent him here. We tell the captain. Quest complete? Wow, that was a lot. If you made it this far, it probably means you liked the video, so like the video, it helps me out a lot, and subscribe if you're not subscribed already. As always, I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching. We have a lot of new content to go over in the next half episode. I'll see you there.